Kia ora everybody, welcome to the third episode of Kōrero with Creators, the Moko Artist Edition. Today's guest is actually an artist that I've been following for a while because I'm a big fan of his awesome use of color in his moko, Stephen Thorpe Art. Stephen Thorpe, welcome brother, good to see you.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It's a privilege.
I'm always being asked about moko, and I try to tell people that the answers lie with the very people who upkeep this taonga, you guys, the moko artists. So I wanted to give my platform to moko artists to hopefully give a little bit of clarity regarding these traditions and to particularly focus on how they're affected by the age of social media and online spaces. So I really want the audience to see the variation in ideologies, so absolutely be as honest as you can. Now for the listeners, I will also preface that we will be using the term moko artist throughout the video because it's easy to understand on an international scale. There are many different terms that can be used to refer to these practitioners of moko, and no offense is meant towards others that might use other terms, because I know some people have an interesting relationship with that term, moko artist. But anyway, first question, introduce yourself. Let the people know who you are.
So, ko mamakai taku maunga, ko waitorihia taku awa, ko taki timu taku waka, tāna nui arangi te marae, o kahungunu, rākai pāka runga mawahine o Kuiwi, o Stephen Thorpe tuku ingoa. Born and raised here in Lower Hutt, Wellington. Did all my schooling years up to year 13 down here, and moved up to Gisborne in 2015, did a 3-year Bachelor of Māori Visual Arts, and started my moko journey from 2018 onwards, practicing for about coming up to 6 years now. It's been a short journey.
Yeah.
Still a long way to go. But yeah.
Awesome.
This is where I'm at the moment.
Yeah, nice. Firstly, I would love to hear your definition or interpretation of moko. What does moko mean to you as an artist?
So, moko, in short term, is our symbol of Indigenous pride. It's what we wear not only to identify ourselves, but our whakapapa, our genealogy, and helps us identify ourselves as Māori as well. For those like myself who grew up in an urban environment, always felt, a little disconnected from te ao Māori, and also a little disconnected from te ao Pākehā as well. Didn't feel like they kind of fit in between one or the other. Moko sort of helps draw us back, to our whakapapa, our roots. Yeah, and bring us back just a little bit more closer.
That's a beautiful answer, actually.
Yeah, could also be a use as a term of healing for those who don't believe in Western medicines. Moko, a form of healing for the heart, the mind, and the soul. It works in all preference.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and you're right too, because one thing I've gathered from the past 2 kōrero I've had is that lots of people use moko for that, for healing. They come in after hardship. It's a moment to signify moving out of said hardships, and moving forward with their lives. So yeah, that's a really good answer. What got you into moko? Why did you start? You said you're relatively fresh to the game, so how did you get started?
I've always been doing art since I was young. My brother did kapahaka growing up, so I was semi exposed to an early stage of moko, whether it be my brother or his friends growing up. They always drew with kapahaka, so it was an early exposure. I guess the main exposure was when I started kapahaka in 2010. A few of the older students were wearing moko from some big names. And in that time, I didn't know much. So whatever note I took was from what they were wearing and whatever they were doodling as well. Yeah. So eventually, I learned off of these older students, and later down the line, got a hold of social media, early day social media. There weren't a lot of moko artists on during those days, maybe like a handful. So I tried not to copy too much, but study, dissect, and just kind of figure out how each individual piece worked, why it worked, and tried creating some of my own little toys here and there. Yeah, it was a yeah, a long journey in school, but by my last year at college, I think I had a fair understanding. I think it was just a matter of taking the next step to actually studying the traditional forms.
Right. And how long is it? It's about 6 years? 6 years you've been doing it? Sort of
Practicing after my degree? Yeah.
Yeah, mean. So what's your favorite thing then about doing moko for people?
I guess it's the chance to be able to create every day. Being creative, constantly having to come up with something new keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenge. A challenge is good all the time. Can't get too comfortable. But also, I think the most rewarding part is just seeing people's faces once the piece is revealed.
Yeah.
Hoping that they're happy with the piece.
Yeah.
But it's a rewarding feeling.
And do you do things like puhoro and moko kanohi as well?
I'm slowly transitioning to it. Yeah.
Yep.
I haven't been doing moko kanohi for long. I'd
Right.
say it's better part of a year and a half. I don't get that many requests, but whenever I do, I try and cater to it as, to as I can.
Yeah.
From what I've learned in the past. Puhoro is a long process, but
yeah,
I'm still learning the whole process as we go along.
Yeah.
Each process is a learning experience.
And that's one thing I seem to have gathered from my previous Kōrero as well, is even people who've been doing it for a longer time, it's it's always an ever learning process. As we know with things in Te Ao Māori anyway, learning the language is a lifelong process. It's not something that you can go, 3 years I'm sorted, It's a forever wānanga going on, forever evolution as well of these art forms. So you... obviously, I said earlier, I follow you on social media, so you have a social media presence, but what is your relationship with social media as a moko artist?
That's a good question. So I've had this page since 2018. I started a brand new page once I started transitioning to moko full time. And it's been a slow build up. Didn't start off great. Had the first few pieces were all learning experiences, and say about a year and a half after starting the page, I jumped into the studio I'm at the moment. It's half museum, half tattoo studio. We got Lucky's Tattoo Museum, New Zealand, and Saturnia Tattoos. And when I started here, the page was steadily rising. It wasn't busy. Moko wasn't high on demand for me too much back then. Like once I started transitioning into color, or experimenting with color, is when it started to pick up. And I got to give it to my partner, because if I didn't give her the reins on the page, then we wouldn't be where we are today. So she helped, maintain both Facebook and Instagram, and we just saw the foot traffic just sort of excel within a year. She told me what worked, what didn't work, what people like to see, and what got attention.
It's good to have someone there who has obviously that sort of analytical skill regarding social media, because it is something you can learn to a point. You can pick up on those patterns and find what works for you and to help get growth. So that's good. That's nice.
Also had to consider, she told me I had to look at it from not only an artist's point of view, but a clientele's point of view. So had to take note of what people liked, what specific audience I was gaining through certain medias. So I find Instagram is the most resourceful one for me. Facebook,
me too.
Not so much. But it still brings in clientele. I still get plenty of people through everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where it can get tricky, you know, is that going, you know, one is definitely a stronger one.
Mhm.
And like for me, of course, TikTok has the biggest number, but for me,
Yep.
though, in terms of actual consistency, Instagram is still that place. And then Facebook's this weird little sort of in the background thing, but there's still people there, you know, and it can get difficult to try and maintain and manage all the different platforms, you know, because you don't want to leave some people out, but then you find, oh, certain places aren't necessarily, you know, they don't seem like they're worth the effort sometimes, but work is work, you know, and like you said, clientele, and for me, obviously, followers and people with questions is, it doesn't really matter if there's one or two, you know. If there's someone who either wants your mahi or wants to ask a question, then there's work for us to do.
Yep.
So speaking of social media, then obviously in the past couple years, Maoridom and moko and haka and things like this have really sort of jumped up into the popularity online. So how do you feel as a moko artist then about the exposure and popularization of moko right now?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's good to see that the craft is, you know, viewed, you know, not only as a tapu craft, but also as what it is, as a taonga. You know,
Mm,
not just for Māori, but non-Māori also. You get a lot of non-Māori coming to the studio, and you know, even from their homeland, they've always been, you know, in awe of not only our culture, but moko, Pounamu, everything that we have to offer. So
mm,
they make the effort, and they always try and be respectful of, you know, the craft.
mm,
Yeah, there can be some downsides with the media, with moko getting a bit, you know, getting more out there. We have the likes of some artists from overseas, you know, who may like the look of
mm.
moko. That just, you know, take little aspects and then apply it to their own work without giving, you know, the full recognition
Yep,
or, you know, the full acknowledgement of the origin
yep.
or origin.
Mm. And so with that, of course, the rise in moko and social media, what we've seen is the popularization of creators like myself, where I guess we've become sort of front facing in regards to moko, but of course we are not the moko artists, yet people approach lots of creators like myself and others in regards to obviously moko because it's on our face and people see it when they open up their phone. But ultimately, of course, we are just kaififi, you know, we're not the ones that have all the knowledge, and so many people expect us to. So how do you feel about creators like ourselves that put ourselves out there and educate with what we know, but of course ultimately we're still not the experts?
Well, yeah, with you guys wearing, you know, wearing our official moko, yeah, wearing it proudly and putting it out there, you're going to get asked questions.
Mm,
And it's good that you're sharing the knowledge that you do know and acknowledging, you know, that you may not know everything. But yeah, I think the way you're going out about it is good.
mm.
You know quite a lot, which is great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I try.
Even you've taught me things that I might not know myself. I don't know
Oh,
everything.
awesome.
Yeah. So, you know, if it's an opportunity for, you know, everyone who has questions to learn something, then by all means, I think it's great.
Mm. And that's
Yeah.
kind of how I try to approach it is, you know, I feel I'm the sort of person too where I'll never be like, oh, I know it. You know, what I know is absolutely, you can't tell me otherwise. I'm always open to be learning new perspectives, you know, whether it's perspectives I agree with, that's up for debate, but I'm always open to hear the perspectives, particularly if it's something that I potentially will then share forward. You know, I like to have as much of an understanding of these things as I can, which is something I'm really enjoying about this wānanga of this series here is, you know, you're my third person to talk to, and there's stuff that I've learned from each conversation, that's stuff I've never heard before, you know. And also what's really interesting is seeing what's common, you know, what ideologies are held so far out of three. Not that it's many, but there are things that show up as commonalities and then the differences, you know. So I always try to make sure that people understand these limits, but finally I'm giving voice to people that may have a little bit more knowledge than I do. And so obviously you think it's important then that some of this stuff is shared online, obviously with its limitations, but that the concept of sharing certain information to a wide audience helps bring understanding and awareness, which in turn hopefully brings more respect towards Māori and Māoridom?
Yes, I think way this is going about, this is another form of wānanga, yeah. Rather than, you know, putting it you know, in writing, you know, for the entire world to kind of, you know, nitpick and read. Yeah, if people are going to be listening through this, they're effectively part of the wānanga also. They'll be learning a lot more individually rather than, you know, just taking certain aspects from the information we provide. And also, yeah, it's information that we choose to share rather than reading the whole, whole book, all of everything that there is to know.
Yeah. And because, you know, a big part of Te Ao Māori is that wānanga, but wānanga happens, you know, together, I suppose, normally face to face, right? And that's a big part of it. And one thing that I've found interesting in sort of not challenging, but maybe slightly pushing, of course, is how in the modern era that face to face can be this, you know, face to face online, on camera, when you can reach distances that you might not be able to cover in real life, for example, right? Now, obviously, I could come to Wellington and see you in country, but obviously lots of people outside of Aotearoa could never have this opportunity for wānanga, you know, when they live in the United States, when they live in wherever they might live. And so that's one thing I've found quite cool, but definitely every now and then it's a little bit challenging because, you know, I'm like, oh, I hope people, you know, don't get too upset about this, you know, I'm not trying to be too boundary pushing, you know, but it's nice to be able to take the wānanga out there. The one concern, of course, that I've had, and other moko artists share the same sentiment, is, of course, you can't control then who absorbs that content, you know. So obviously, yes, you have plenty of people who are there with the best intentions, but then, like you said, sometimes there are artists out there who just, they take your stuff and they take it without acknowledging where it's come from. I'm sure the same thing happens with the content that I share online, you know, it reaches the wrong audiences and things like that. But so then, as an artist who uses social media, have you had much experience with the negative hater troll side of the internet?
Not as much, but I've had a few experiences.
Yeah. How do you approach those interactions personally?
Sometimes I don't really. There's been a couple times where people might have left in a nasty comment, but I don't normally check those. And by the time I'm like informed about it, I have a lot of other whānau friends that are backing me up and, you know, end up, you know, getting quite aggressive toward them, and then they end up, you know, putting a little target on themselves by leaving comments like that. Yeah, it's good to see that we're getting support. Yeah, but, you know, there's no need for, you know, nasty comments or whatsoever.
And in your experience, are they more often targeted towards you, the individual, or the subjects? If you're sharing like the complete work that you've done on someone, is it more directed towards the kaiwhiwhi, the recipient?
Mostly the kaiwhiwhi or whatever they receive. I've had one comment on Instagram once where I did a piece that was mostly red ink, red lining, and one lady left a comment. By the time I saw it, I had a few people having a go at her. Yeah, it was good to see the whānau supporting and backing me up. But yeah, that was one instance. And another one, I posted a moko kauai on Facebook. It automatically goes through Instagram to Facebook anyway. So most times I don't check those insights or that traffic. But I find with Facebook, there's a lot more racist people on there. Yeah, who, they might not be their right page, could be just a, you know, a fake page, but, you know, they still leave the comments that hurt. And yeah, it's mostly targeted at moko kanohi. Yeah. Like, why would you you know, do that to your face? Or they just have any sort of comment just to put in the negative.
And what I find interesting about it, which is why I asked, is because, you know, for me and my page, I've heard everything, you know, everything under the sun, and like yourself, I for the most part just ignore them. You know, they're not too much worry to me. But for me, all that negative energy or negative comments, it's only directed towards me, you know. So like I can control how I feel about comments about myself. One thing I find interesting about the nature of the page of a moko artist is that if a hater comes in and there's a moko kanohi that you've posted, they're going towards the recipient, you know. And it's quite, I wonder how difficult that is to navigate, putting other people out there to potentially receive this, which is a little bit out of your control. You know, you can't tell how that person might find their photo that you've posted and go, oh wow, yeah, that's an awesome day, and then they open up the comment section, you know, and people are going, oh, la, 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 la. That must be a difficult.
I think, you know, if people don't have anything good to say, they shouldn't say anything at all. But if they can't keep it in, you know, it's up to us just to, you know, not let it get to us. That goes to artist and recipient also.
So this might be a little bit of a personal question, so you're more than welcome not to answer. But one thing that I think a lot of people get confused about, which is why they approach me online, is that because I've got moko, I'm also someone who does moko. I think it's kind of probably that international misconception that anyone with a face tattoo is probably a tattoo artist because they can't get any other job, right? So I think that's a big part of the misunderstanding of why people approach me. But I often say, you'll be surprised, a lot of moko artists themselves don't have moko kanohi. So why do you as a moko artist not have moko kanohi yet?
Myself? Personally, not there just yet. Not my time. A lot of people say, you know, they know when their time is ready. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. Personally, it's not my chapter in my life just yet.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I really just want listeners to sort of realize the range of reasons that people get it, and just being a practitioner of moko isn't necessarily something that makes people comfortable to jump in there and make that decision for themselves yet, you know. So that's cool. Do you think more Māori should have moko?
Definitely. Yeah. Once upon a time, it was everywhere. It was you know, throughout the whole motu. We've been slowly getting the numbers up. But one day it would be nice to see, you know, every Māori wearing that proudly, you know, without controversy at all.
Yes. Yeah, I totally agree.
Without having to worry, without going into public and feeling like stared at or judged for wearing their pride on their face.
Yeah, just to feel normal, normal and comfortable.
Yeah, our goal is to try and normalize moko once again. Make it more prominent. Make it unnormal to not have moko.
You know, that's something that Te Haunui said, which he's really noticed in the past few years was, you know, he was at a moko papa or whatever, and he said, oh, me and the other artist were the only ones in that room without it, you know, and he said, it was the first time I'd felt weird to not have it, you know, I felt the odd one out, and it's definitely getting better. But like you said, places like Facebook is where you see that other side to Aotearoa that is full of the hate and that lots of negativity that still exists in this country. You know, don't get it wrong, anyone who's listening, it's not by no means some beautiful paradise haven that it's quite often painted to be over here, but it is getting better, I think, slowly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like Honu said, yeah, it is. In some places, it can be you know, you feel like the old one out, not having your mataora or kōwai. That's how I felt in Gisborne for my 3 years. The amount of moko that's up there, moko kanohi, or moko in general, it's more than people that don't wear it. Yeah, when you're walking down the street, you feel like the old one out.
Yeah, which is great to see. You know, it's really awesome seeing it. Certain areas are really strong over certain, you know, other. You go down to the South Island, and all of a sudden it's much rarer to see that. But up the north is ticking along quite well, I think. We're flying through these questions, so that first section's already done, which is my questions, and so I wanted a portion of these episodes to be dedicated to the questions that I'm getting asked all day, every day by my followers and viewers, and hopefully over the course of this series they'll be able to see how much or how little variation there can be in the answers amongst Moko artists, and hopefully in the process of that break down some of the misunderstandings surrounding Moko. Now your answers can be as simple as yes or no or as in depth as you want, but the one thing to think about going into these questions is answer these questions as if you were talking to someone who's approaching you as a client, you know, so that just saves you having to preface at the beginning of every question that this is just your opinion. For anyone listening, this is just his one, you know, take on these questions, and this is the answer you would get if you were a customer approaching the bro for some mahi. So, the first question is moko only for Māori?
That's when the term moko and kirituhi comes in. You would have heard this already. Moko, yes. The term moko comes from Māori to Māori. And the term kirituhi comes from Māori to non-Māori. With that question being asked, yes, moko is only for Māori, but that doesn't necessarily limit it to just Māori. Yeah. It all depends on the ethnicity, the genealogy of the recipient as well.
And for you, when it comes to moko, is kirituhi excluded from kanohi, you know, face or puhoro?
You know, our most tapu process of moko would be moko kanohi and puhoro. And I think it's safe to say it's best to keep those two placements for Māori only.
Yeah,
everywhere else is, you know, good for kirituhi.
Mean. A common misconception, I think, is I quite often just use the term moko, right? I don't often use the word tā moko, and people get confused because they go, oh, I thought that meant grandchild, you know? So for you, is the term tā moko, moko, or both?
I mean, in the beginning, I used to say tā moko all the time. We were taught by one bit of information from one of the uncles up in Gisborne, Uncle Derek Lardeli. He gave us a good explanation on the term tā moko and how it was formed. So, misconception with tā moko. Tā literally translates into the term the ownership of the moko. So, when people say tā moko, to some, it literally sounds like you're saying my moko.
Right.
Yeah. To some, it might be correct.
Right.
Yeah. That was just the explanation we were giving. Moko is the craft, tā being the ownership of the craft. And also the comparison to, you know, moko puna. Moko puna is viewed as a taonga, same as the craft of moko. So it only makes sense that both names kind of go together.
Yeah, no, that's right. And one thing, of course, for anyone listening in, Te Reo Māori has a lot of, I don't know what the word is, crossover, you know, words that are used in multiple contexts to mean different things, but it's the same word. And for me, you know, I had the understanding as well, one version I've heard of tā moko was that tā is the application of, you know, it's the verb of giving or doing moko, so that the finished product is moko. So when someone says, oh, you're a tohunga tā moko, you're an expert of applying moko, but when you're talking about it as the finished product, that it's to be moko. But then some people just use both interchangeably, you know, so I just want people to understand that it doesn't really matter what word you use, you know, but people get confused about that word. And I've heard a story of the history of the word moko puna is moko as in moko reflected in a puna, in the pool. And so your grandchildren are a reflection of you, the one who has moko, kind of. So that's a version of moko puna I've heard as well, which is the crossing over of those two words. And then obviously for lots of people truncate moko puna quite often just to say moko. And these are my moko, you know, these are my grandkids. One of the issues we see online, or I've noticed a lot online, is how much the concept of blood quantum is really ingrained into, well, cultures and peoples around the world, but obviously still Māori as well. And one of the questions I'm always asked is, I'm only part Māori, can I get moko?
So, regardless of the percentage of Māori that you are, if you have Māori whakapapa in you, you're Māori regardless.
Mm-hmm. Which means you are entitled to everything that Māori have, such as moko.
Of course.
When someone approaches you to get moko done, do they have to have permission from their elders?
Depends really on their, their tikanga from where they come from.
Mm.
Some may be from, not too certain on certain tikanga from everywhere.
Mm.
I know from some places that are, they might need their approval from the kuya, but the kuya has to be present during that time.
Right.
They might get their approval, but the kuya can't be present, then the process isn't going down.
Right.
Until they're available.
Mm.
And then some other places that doesn't apply.
Mm. Yeah, and that's one thing I think that's been good about the kōrero I've had so far is as a lot of this is case by case basis, So I always try and encourage people to take your question or your curiosities to your artist of preference, because your case, it's not necessarily a one size fits all kind of situation, right? So I've no point me giving you an answer, because by the time you go and ask a moko artist, they might give you a completely different answer,
Exactly.
And that's definitely solidified in some of these kōrero I've had so far, is a lot of these questions or curiosities that people come to me with are case by case from your guys' perspective as well. How old do you have to be to get moko?
It also depends on the region that you live in. I know that in Wellington, the youngest you can receive moko is 16 was parental consent.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it would be 18.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's not you don't have to be a 75-year-old expert of life. That's one of the biggest misconceptions. Yeah. Do you have to be fluent in te reo Māori to get moko?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Mm.
Depends on your viewpoint, really.
Mm.
No, not necessarily, but it is encouraged.
Mm.
Me myself, I'm not fluent or confident 100%. My understanding's to an extent, but I'm still on that journey myself.
Mm.
And for those who, either take upon, the journey of going for their moko kauai or mataora, leading up to it, they start their real journey.
Yep.
And eventually, right before they finish their tohu, they're comfortable enough to wear the craft.
Mm.
And I feel like myself as a kaita as well, I think it's appropriate that I should be, learning the reo as well. For those who feel a bit too, whakamā to wear it because they don't know the reo, that's not a thing.
Mm. Yeah. And that's kind of a sentiment that seems to be carried, is it's not necessary, but it is then encouraged that from that moment forward, your life is kind of, you make a shift in your life upon receiving, let's take it up to the moko kanohi department, the sort of one that normally that's where that question is directed towards, it's not, oh, can I get moko on my arms if I don't speak? It's normally, can I get moko kanohi if I can't speak te reo Māori? And yeah, one of the sentiments that seems to be shared is you don't have to, but from that point forward, your life is now in te ao Māori, and included in your journey through te ao Māori is obviously the reo. So from that point forward, it would be encouraged, that you make that change and you make that effort going forward. So obviously you're in a studio and you work out of a studio. So do you think it's a necessity that you get moko done at a marae?
I think depends on how many people you would like present there to tautoko you.
Mm.
Yeah. If you don't have too many whānau, they're going to be present. A studio can be fine as long as, a quiet and private event.
Yep.
I think when it's next to multiple people or on a public day, might not be appropriate.
Yep.
But as long as we have that quiet space just for them and that kaupapa only, and in the studio is fine. Marae, much more of a special experience, not only for the recipient but the whānau as well.
Do you have to get moko in New Zealand?
Not necessarily. Some kaita take their craft all over the world.
Yep.
And they come across Māori, they haven't had the chance to come back and receive it. So it gives opportunity for Māori to receive it outside of Aotearoa as well.
Absolutely. And I think the key sentiment there with that answer is that it's about the artist, not necessarily the location, but making sure that you have a actual moko artist and you're not necessarily going to some random tattoo guy and pulling up a picture of me and going, give me that, I'm Māori, so give me that. It's better to find the correct artist, but it doesn't necessarily matter in 2023 where they are located. Māori live all over the world now, so and there are moko artists all over the world. Lots in Australia, of course, because there's lots of Māori there, but I do know that they exist outside of Australia and New Zealand as well.
Yeah, one thing I constantly had was requests from Māori who might live in UK, and they ask for designs, to be drawn either digital or on paper, and to take it to another tattoo artist for them to do over there. Might have been a normal process back in the early 2000s or the 90s, before moko was really booming. But it's in somewhat way a little disrespectful to us now.
And that seems to be the case, at least with the past two I've chatted to as well, that concept of the quickest way for them to feel disrespected is to ask for their work, but not then go to them to get it done, which is true. It is, because the moko artist is the whole package, you guys are the practitioner and the artist and everything else in between, and then also you guys are a part of the ritual, I guess, of moko. What are you going to get the bro in London to do your karakia for you, like things like that. Exactly. Those more ritualistic spiritual processes surrounding moko that are a big part of moko, so the whole package comes with you guys. And so for anyone tuning in today, it's not, like you said, once upon a time, a big part of the revival of moko was the lack of artists, practitioners, but there were lots of artists. And so a big history, if you didn't realize, anyone tuning in, was that Māori would do the designs and then take them to non-Māori who had the skills with the tattoo machines to enact the process of moko, but the designs themselves being done by Māori. But now, you're right, moko artists are plentiful. It's so difficult to not find a moko artist. People always message me going, how do I find it? I'm like, if you literally type in moko into Instagram, hashtag moko, a multitude of options come up. I would normally recommend to people hashtag moko, not hashtag Māori tattoo, because Māori tattoo comes up with the people that the bro was talking about that sort of have taken moko and are kind of doing it their own thing and a bit disrespectfully around the world, which that exists too. You see plenty of that online. Yeah.
Even the hashtag, tāmoko is a little different from hashtag moko.
Yeah.
For a long time, even non-Māori tattooists were using that hashtag. I think, with the term moko being more prominent now, that hashtag has a lot more Māori artists on there now.
And that's normally how I tell people to be. Because one thing that's difficult, I guess, that I have a hard time trying to explain to people is people go, how do I know that a moko artist is a real moko artist and not someone pretending to be, And I say, well, it's a tricky thing because those of us like myself, I know. I don't know how I know, but I just know what the difference is. But that's very difficult to teach on, But my one little somewhat safe trick was hashtag moko, specifically that hashtag. It seems to filter out the best. Māori tattoo will give you the whole range of incorrect stuff. You're right, tāmoko itself can be interesting. But I find hashtag Moko, in my experience, is the most filtered version. Like you said, the popularity of it might start changing that more recently, and now that people are catching on to those terms. But for the most part, I think it's a relatively safe bet if you're really concerned.
Yeah, the hashtags work. They help, find a multitude of Moko artists, and I think from there it's just the responsibility of the recipient to do their research. Find an artist that they like, because most times an artist will, or a recipient will bring a combination of screenshots of work from different artists and take them to a completely different artist.
Right.
Yeah, that used to be the case with me a lot.
Which wasn't a problem. Coming with other people's stuff for reference.
Yeah, which wasn't a problem in the beginning. It isn't a problem now, but it makes me feel like a little limited. At first, I felt like I had to cater to a certain aspect of style that they liked, and nowadays most of the time it's just my mahi that they're referencing, which is great. Yeah,
which is nice. Which is something too I think is important for listeners to hear, that Moko isn't a what's the word? It's not a one style thing. Artists have their own unique styles. Regions can have their own unique styles. And so when approaching an artist, don't treat it sort of like, they're just Moko artists. They'll just do Moko. So I like this guy's work, and and then you're the nearest artist. No, you're better off picking an artist for their mahi, right? Because there is variation. So much so that people pick me out on the street and know who's done my work, right? They go, "Oh, Te Haunui must have done your arms, did he?" Because they're distinct styles. And so when searching for artists, they're not just Moko artists. They're Moko artists with their style, their skill, their knowledge. And so I always carry the sentiment that if Moko is as important to you as I think it should be, there's no amount of travel, there's no amount of money that would get between you and the artist that you would like to use for their mahi, right? So it's kind of speaking about that coming to you sort of thing. Do you think Moko artists have to be from the same iwi as the recipient?
That's what I was told growing up. It might have been a certain tikanga back in the day, but over the years that I've been studying and doing one-on-one with other artists, what we've been told is that back in the early days, Moko artists kaita were travelers. They went all over the motu, and they did mahi moko kauai, tuhoro, for everybody. And it didn't specify to what iwi, because the more mahi they did, the more mana they received. It's I think some old tikanga we're having to re-educate some Māori and get other people comfortable with other kaita from other iwi doing it as well.
Yep.
Most times I find out that some recipients are either distantly related or even closely related.
Right.
Even without bringing the whakapapa up.
Yeah. And I think that's what Te Haunui said, was sort of, he said, well, if you try hard enough, you can probably find the whakapapa connection anyway. It's like that. It's the nature of the modern Māori is there's so much interconnectedness that we don't realize there's always a way to make a connection,
Might not be my whakapapa, but could be your partner's whakapapa perhaps, or a friend's whakapapa. It works out.
Yeah, it does. And that is a history that I have read about and heard about as well, was that Moko artists from an age gone by were travelers. They there wasn't that many, or not necessarily every hapu, every group had people trained in the art form. So it was not uncommon for the artists to make their rounds, and they were coming from all over the place, like you said. So you're right, it's not absolutely a necessity. If it's something you want, hey, go for it, right? But if it's something that is holding you back, you know, then it's worth thinking about whether it's absolutely required. When it comes to moko kanohi, a common sort of expectation that we see perpetuated a lot is that you have to stop drinking, smoking, things like that. What are your thoughts?
Well, from what I've been told from other artists, yeah, when you take on the moko kanohi, yes, there are certain expectations of you. You know, you wear that when you wear that, you wear your culture, you wear your tipuna. You know, you carry them with you wherever you go. You don't necessarily have to stop being yourself, but you just have to be mindful of certain things that you know that might happen in your life. You know, take that on. You don't disrespect your tipuna in a way that might, you know, dishonor them, dishonor yourself, or dishonor the artist. Yeah. You know, what Mataora has done or Mokoa has done, make sure it's not shown on Police 7.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, because I think, too, the sentiment there for me as well in 2023 is that moko is also still not in a space, like we said earlier, where it's completely normalized. So it's one of those things that if it catches bad press, for example, it instantly is reflected by those who are not so friendly as Maori, you know, because you are a representative of Maori. It's one of those things that makes you, you know, indescribably and no longer you're undeniably Maori when you start walking around with moko kanohi. So everything you do not only reflects on you, it reflects on Maori. And because we're in a time where, like we said, moko isn't quite normalized and there's still a lot of negative feelings towards Maori by certain groups, anything like that that could, you know, taint your personal image will absolutely then be pushed onto Maori as a collective, you know. So that's something that I've been mindful of. Not that I'm running around being crazy, but, you know, it's something to be mindful of as people with moko kanohi, that you not only represent yourself, you represent your artist and Maori, you know. And that's, there are plenty of people out there who are waiting for that moment. Like you said, they're waiting for that to show up on Police 10-7 and have their field day in the comment sections, you know.
Yeah, it just takes one person to make an entire group look bad.
Yeah. That's right. So obviously, it's quite often understood that moko represents whakapapa, right? It is or can be a representation of whakapapa. People ask me all the time, I don't actually know my whakapapa, can I still get moko? I know I'm Māori, but I don't know my pepeha, I don't know my whakapapa.
Can people still get moko if they don't know their whakapapa?
Yep.
I think for some artists, some would encourage them to go find their whakapapa before starting that moko journey. Yeah. Sometimes I find that people don't know their whakapapa on the day of the booking. Yeah, kind of stunned me, to be honest. But I always try and encourage them, you know, you have now a right to go and find your whakapapa, you know, find your marae, go back to your marae, at least so you can say you've been to your marae. Yeah, it's a one step closer to reconnecting. Yeah, find out every aspect of your pepeha and memorize that. That's you know, that's the one thing that identifies you as Maori as a whole, knowing that pepeha.
And is that a sentiment that you carry regardless of placement on the body?
I think any moko in general, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one thing that, again, going back to people who are ready to be naysayers online or things like that, is one of the things that is really often brought up, I find, at least towards me, in regards to being a person in 2023 that has moko, is this idea that moko was only for chiefs. So was moko only for chiefs, or is moko today only for chiefs?
I guess yeah, there were some, I don't know if we call it misconceptions, but from what I've read and been told, um, back in the day, you know, when you go to war and you'd come back, you'd get a small part of your mataora done.
Mm,
So, little section at a time, because each time you receive the part of your kanohi, you go in a state of tapu.
mm,
And there's every time you get done, there's always a 50% chance you might not make it out.
mm,
So if you ever saw somebody who had nearly the entire mataora done, entire face, they were considered, considered a rangatira or a warrior on the battlefield.
right.
But it didn't necessarily apply to just chiefs. No, it
Right.
everyone throughout the whole iwi or hapu or moko kanohi and puhuro equally.
Mm. And that's what I always try and say is potentially one thing I've noticed a lot is people treat, let's say, mataora or moko kanohi as a kind of one design, one rule kind of thing. You know, it's the full face, it's this and that, but it's exactly what you said. It's sections. It's a sectional process. You know, you could almost argue that the face is just as separate as, you know, your arm is to your shoulder and your chest. You know, there's areas that are for certain purpose and certain things. So yet maybe once upon a time, certain areas represented being a rangatira, right? But the notion that you have to be someone of that status just to start it is normally the misconception, and it seems to be that seems to be an answer carried across the people that I've had a kōrero with so far. You know, like to begin, no, maybe to finish, certain achievements or things have to take place, say, but just to start, everyone's wānanga is different. You know, talk to your artist. Talk to your artist. That's really the goal of this whole kōrero with all of these people, is to realize that lots of the answers are going to come from that kōrero with your artist of choice. So the most popular question I get by far, it's not even comparable, is how, as a moko artist, do you approach the concepts of trans/non-binary clientele, particularly, of course, regarding moko kanohi, because that's what we are often shown as being gender specific or having boundaries of gender?
That is one of the most difficult questions. Yes, to put it on public is very difficult. I've had a couple, couple people who were transitioning come to the studio and receive not moko kanohi, but some moko, and that was plenty of opportunity to kōrero with them. Some weren't open to talk about it, some were, and I got asked that question from one. In regards to moko kanohi, I think it also comes down to whakaaro Māori as well. Identify with whatever you want. We have to respect that. But I think it also helps to view it from a Māori viewpoint as well. Yeah, it's a difficult process, and personally, I think it should be something that should be discussed amongst other moko artists as a whole as well, to see whether there can be something that suits for that area. Yeah, we're not one to exclude. So
Yeah,
surely there can be something that we can do.
yeah, and it's one of those things that I can see it's still so, because you see a lot of different opinions about this sort of topic online, not necessarily from moko artists, right? This is just from people and their personal opinions about how it should go, almost answering the question for artists, which I think can be a tricky thing to navigate, which is why I include this question for you guys to potentially answer. And one thing that does show up is this needs to be discussed with more moko artists together first, because there seems to be still a lot of uncertainty surrounding the question. Obviously, what's important to remember is how moko hasn't been it was nearly lost, right? It had a period where it was nearly lost. In that period, you lose a lot of things like how that might have worked pre-colonial contact, pre-colonial history. Obviously, there's the story of the tupuna, I forget her name, but Mr. G did the mural of her, and she was a woman, but he did her with full face mata ora, because in her story she whakatane to save the waka or something. Don't quote me on the story so much, but anyway, in her story she had to channel masculine energy in order to do something in her area, right? And because of that, they depict her with mata ora, obviously normally the markings of a man as a born woman. So there is historical context to these scenarios, right? But the problem with that is, one, it's a one iwi hapu even maybe kind of situation, and two, that so much of that knowledge and period was lost due to colonial history. We're still trying to get moko back to its bare basics, and then figure out how you break out of those, either, whether they're restrictions that we put on ourselves in a modern place, whether they were restrictions that existed historically, who knows? But that's the problem. It's the who knows, and that wānanga still needs to happen. What Haruru Art said yesterday was he gave a transgender woman, he called it Kauai inspired. So he said it was on the chin, it was the placement that you would normally associate with a wahine, but he didn't himself consider it Kauai. He called it Kauai inspired, but he had to change it a little bit because, of course, this was a unique scenario. And that's obviously something, again, as we're picking up from this series, case by case, everyone's going to be different. He said in some circumstances, he said with that particular person, they were very open about that from the beginning, where he's had some people who he's been, consulting with. And then when he actually arrives to the day, they've been lying. I don't really know how you phrase that, but they weren't necessarily forthright in who they were. And so he felt like he'd been, sort of tricked, I guess, because in order to do these things correctly in unique circumstances, there needs to be the correct wānanga in those processes, So honesty is key with your artists, for anyone listening, basically.
Yeah, no, I agree with what Cody did. Yeah, that was something I kind of mentioned to that one. It's still, still a conversation that has yet to be had with most moko artists. I'm happy that Cody took it upon himself to do that. That's great.
Yeah, because there are some people out there, that they just don't do it, or maybe they're just not comfortable doing it because of how it can be received on either end. Like we know, it's a difficult thing to navigate. And then there are some artists, obviously, who are trying maybe new things, or they're just trying something so that, like you said, you don't want to exclude anybody. You don't want anyone to be excluded, especially when it comes to Māoritanga, right? You want all Māori to feel comfortable being Māori in their skin. So it's definitely cool to see that evolution. But it is pretty fresh for lots of moko artists, in their kaupapa. So this is an opportunity now to, one, maybe give me some ideas on who to talk to next, but to show other people some of the multitude of moko artists out there. Who are your favorite moko artists and or inspirations in your journey?
Oh, too many, bro. Way too many. I guess the only thing I can do is go back from the beginning. I'd say from when I was in college, the first time I was exposed, the style of moko that we know today. One of our older students came back from holiday with a shoulder piece from Te Wihi Preston, and this was like 2010, so it was like young Te Wihi. That style of moko was still, fresh, getting more prominent, getting out there. Once I got a hold of social media, I found the likes of Sai McLeod, Yuki Wero, and from there found Henare Brooking, Moko Ida, Hoho Mohi. And eventually, yeah, Instagram just kind of connected all the moko artists together. Yeah. And I think I don't have a favorite, eh? It's
Yeah,
hard.
so
It's
so
too hard.
hard, eh? There's so many
Way too
great ones
hard.
out there.
They've all been inspiring to me in some way or form. Yeah, even younger generations, yeah, they're getting good and they're getting innovative. So yeah, so it's good to see that moko is now, alive, alive and well.
And I think that's something cool again about social media, because I seem to see this sentiment, is it's kind of, Moko artists seem to be very kind of like this little tight-knit community, right? Obviously, because there's not too many of you, but social media, again, allows for that connection, because one thing that's happening in these kōrero, is you guys so far, you're bringing up the same names, very similar names. There's lots of crossover, and when I mention, who are your favorite artists online, blah, 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 lots of the time the same names are showing up. Uhiwero, I think he's been mentioned in every kōrero so far. Another moko artist that I follow, and one that I hope to reach out to have a kōrero as well. And you can tell, and one thing I notice about a lot of these names is they are very active on social media, their social media profiles, I guess, exist quite strongly, which I guess it's a great way for people to find these inspirations, because otherwise the inspiration would be on real people. You'd have to go out there looking at real people, or like Cody mentioned yesterday, you're taking inspiration from the natural world, your environment outside, which of course is where our tupuna got their inspiration from in the first place. The koru coming from ferns and our fauna and the symbolism around us in the world. But social media allows us to see the multitude of styles and see what you like and see what you strive for, and the quality of mahi that as an artist you are striving for. So yeah, that's cool. Lots of people can tell from the multitude of content shared online from people receiving moko is that it's always a very, very emotional thing. Moko anywhere, but obviously particularly moko kanohi for people is a very spiritual, I get lots of questions like, why are they crying? Are they crying because it's sore? Like, why is there so much crying going on? Because lots of people don't understand the magnitude of that moment for lots of Māori. But obviously, I would like to know, how spiritual or powerful is that process of giving people moko to you, and is that a weight that disappears with time? Is it a weight that changes depending on placement? Is there more power for moko kanohi behind for you than there is, say, kurawaka or something?
I mean, yeah, people show gratitude in multiple ways. When it comes to moko kanohi, 9 times out of 10 there are a few tears shed, and it's, I guess, when it comes to that process, it's a form of rebirth. You go on the table as yourself, or someone considered their previous self, and they come off the table a completely new person. And having those, people to help support them there, being part of that rebirthal process, it's good, and it's it's an indescribable, rewarding feeling.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's a good feeling. It's just hard to describe.
Yeah.
It doesn't always apply to just moko kanohi only. Seen some people, break down as small as like an earpiece, but it might be the significance of the meaning to them.
Yeah.
Something so special to them. Might be a particular design that they provided. Does something that their nan might have done in the past, and that's special to them. Something that however special the piece is,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's right too, because obviously for lots of Māori, the moko kanohi is that kind of the ultimate, I guess. But for lots of Māori, the first moko, like just being comfortable enough and confident enough in your Māori tanga just to receive moko anywhere, can be huge for people. It's tiny, like you said, it could be a tiny little piece on the air. But for lots of Māori, that can be a very, very powerful thing for them, and even just starts their journey, their moko journey. And then, of course, later in life, potentially evolve it into whatever. But you know, because obviously it is just the face that we often see such emotive response from people. But of course, because that's the one that the internet likes a lot. You know, it's one of those ones that it's popular on the internet. But so you're not really shown the circumstances of people who still have. And, you know, I treasure all my moko. You know, my arms, when I got them done for my 21st birthday, was a big moment for me, you know. Depends on how you look at it. Maybe not quite as big as the day that I got my face done, but still just as significant, you know, just still a big part of my personal journey as a Māori person. And I'm sure many other Māori hold that sentiment. So one thing that I try to explain to people all the time is moko is unique every time. You know, in theory, there should be no two moko in existence, right? And a big part of that is that moko is drawn quite often on the day. You know, it's like a sort of a freehand, in my experience, with the Sharpie kind of thing. The only exception to that is someone like Tristan Manuatapu, who did my hands and my throat, which is very geometrical, so he does use stencils for that. But stuff like this and stuff like my face, it's all done freehand with a Sharpie. So people are very curious about that process. What goes into your process when someone, you know, comes into the studio on the day of?
Yeah, well, it's common to explain the process daily. So on the day of the process, we you know, kōrero to the recipient, you know, not only about their whakapapa, but whatever the significance of the piece, whatever whakamarama or meaning that they want behind the piece. We try and limit it to a certain degree, because a lot of times people come in, you know, with a long list
of
things, and they're trying to fit it into a small piece, which can be a little limiting to the creativity. So I normally try and just keep it to 5 points, maybe 3. It's a lot easier to create if it's only 1. So yeah, if it's something that's like you know, about, you know, a whānau member specifically, then it can be a lot more creative. And I'm going to have to take aspects of that recipient's whakapapa, you know, whatever elements from, you know, of, you know, designs from where they're from. If I do know them, then I can apply that to their piece. And if I don't know their whakapapa well, I'll take it upon myself and do a bit of research. Yeah, that way I can put a bit of that into there. And freehand draw on the day solely to, you know, create something unique for them, but also you know, it maps to their body type.
Yes.
You know, you can draw it on paper, but it might not necessarily translate well from paper to skin. Yeah. If it's like geometrical or a small piece, perhaps, but you know, if it's a full forearm wrap or full sleeve, even a chest piece, it might not translate very well. So, yeah, it's up to us to, you know, map with that person's body type, the way it's, you know, it suits you, it suits you well, and it also keeps us on our toes. Make sure that we are, you know, our creativity is always ticking along.
Yeah.
If we have to create something new every day, in my case, I do sometimes 2 to 3 a day.
Right.
Yeah. Constantly having to make sure that I don't do the same thing twice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even some people don't do the media that much or don't look at other artists, but I keep up to date to make sure that whatever combinations other artists are doing, I don't accidentally do it myself.
Right.
It might happen by, you know, by accident if you don't look at their work. So, yeah, just trying to, you know, not step on anyone's toes, as well as, you know, just keep moving forward.
Yeah. No, that's quite cool, actually. And that's one thing I mentioned to Te Haunui was, I think lots of people don't quite realize, potentially tuning in, one of the beauties of moko, or one of the reasons that moko does look so striking and beautiful, is exactly what you said about the fact that it's drawn to the body. You know, the whole part of the way that moko flows depends on how it fits and sits on the body of the recipient. And I think, of course, I don't know this for a fact, but I think that's one of the obvious differences. Now, that's much easier said than done, obviously, to try and teach people. But it's one of the instant things when I see a picture and I go, oh, that wasn't done by a moko artist, you know, because it doesn't flow the same. They lack that. And I'm sure you've seen it, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about as a moko artist. It's one of those things that people go, oh, how do you know? And I go, oh, you just know, you know, and you can see certain ways that designs have been taken and are then put, and whether they've been done, you know, with a stencil, and that's why, because they've just drawn the design and then they've put it on an arm and it doesn't flow with said person's arm, or maybe they just lack the knowledge in general to realize the way that moko flows is to follow the contours of a body. But it's one of the instant sort of red flags for me is when I see Maori tattoo, and the instant thing is that they have sort of these, you know, jarring lines that are breaking the flows of the recipient's body. So I'm glad you mentioned that little bit.
Yeah, there is a bit of a there is a bit of a flow to how it works. Some of the older generation don't like that term very much,
right?
But we're the younger ones, so that's the best way we understand it. And if it flows with the body, that's how we kind of view it. Stenciled, I'm not the greatest at stenciling. Yeah, it takes too many attempts. So personally, I'm a lot more comfortable with freehand drawing it on anyway.
Yeah, mean. So, have you ever turned anybody away from getting moko? And what was your reasoning for that?
Most requests now, just because of past experiences, if they're wanting something that's fused with something else,
right?
Some might have Māori and Samoan whakapapa,
right?
And if they want moko and tatau fused together, I get that request every now and again. But out of respect for the craft of tatau, I try not to touch it, because like other tattooists who have respect for moko, they don't know the craft, they don't know the origin, and they don't know the meanings, so they would feel like they're disrespecting it if they even attempted it. I feel that same sort of way about tatau.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, out of respect, I tell them no, but I can suggest or recommend some artists who can either do tatau specifically or do a mixture of both.
Right.
There's a lot of artists who can do that, and successfully as well.
And I think that's an important thing as well for them people listening, you know, is like, there is a difference too, you know. Quite often I get asked that question, what's the difference between a Samoan person and a Maori person? Or I thought Maori and Hawaiians were all the same. Like, there is a difference, and there is absolutely a difference in those respective art forms and forms of marking, you know. And so when you approach a moko artist, moko is moko, tatau is tatau. If you want the fusion, like you said, there are artists out there who do it, you know, they have the knowledge for both. But do your research, you know, because it's if you think it's important enough to go to a moko artist for moko, then it's important enough for you to go to a proper artist for whatever other respective traditional art form that may exist out there. So we mentioned kirituhi way at the beginning of the kōrero. So obviously you are someone that gives kirituhi. Do you take on kirituhi requests for non-Māori?
I do. If they come, if they approach me in a respectful way. Yeah. A lot of times it's, Europeans just passing through who have spent a lot of time traveling Aotearoa, and they did some good miles, or good time here. They've done the whole country, which is something I can't say I've done yet. So they put the miles in, they met the people, and they learned a lot. I'm happy to do kirituhi as long as they have the right intention for wearing it.
Right.
wear it with pure intentions, wear it with respect. Yeah, that applies to not only just non-Māori, but Māori also.
Yeah.
Wear it with the right intentions and purity.
Because I think sometimes we get this idea online that kirituhi isn't, what's the word? Significant. It's not as significant. And so I think people can get this understanding that, oh, well, you can just get it done because kirituhi's to get done because it looks cool, kind of thing. But obviously that's not a sentiment that you personally hold. I'm sure that changes depending on who you ask. But for you, obviously kirituhi holds importance in its own art form as well. And that so then people receiving it need to have some pretty good, strong reasoning behind why they are approaching you for kirituhi.
Yeah, I think it's viewed as the same as, moko to Māori. The only difference is, the recipients, whakapapa. But, yeah. Just the name change, really.
Yeah.
The design elements can be the same. Maybe you have to modify it to something a bit more modern, a bit less traditional. But, yeah. The way I was explained, the way kirituhi was explained to me was, moko is our taonga, and, moko is for our taonga from Māori to Māori. And kirituhi is our taonga from Māori to non-Māori. It's literally a gift regardless of who you give it to. Regardless of their, their whakapapa, still treated as a gift.
Yeah, that's sweet. That's cool, And because I think a lot of people ask me who are non-Māori, and they want it to be special, They don't want it to just be there to look cool, but they're concerned that like kirituhi sometimes has that connotation of just being there to look cool, And I go, no, it's not always the case, obviously. And like you said, that's a great way to put it. It's still a taonga no matter what word and what art form you are giving, It's still a taonga from us to the recipient. So probably my second most asked question, and this is really an interesting one, of course, because I find, and I talked about this in the last two kōrero, with the potential mistranslation of whāngai to adoption, or that adoption is, as Cody put it yesterday, the closest equivalent. But I'm adopted by Māori, but I myself have no Māori blood. Am I entitled to moko, or am I entitled to kirituhi? Where does that stand for you? But I try to use the word whāngai because normally that is different than just straight up adoption.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a tricky situation. But, yeah, I've had, very good friends, and one good friend in my life who was whāngai, to a Ngāpuhi whānau, and though he whakapapas to Ngāti Parau, he whakapapas to Ngāpuhi also. He's got two whakapapas now, regardless of whāngai or blood. I think that should apply to non-Māori also. If you're whāngai to Māori whānau, you're Māori.
Yeah.
If you're part of that whānau, you take upon yourself that whakapapa, then that's yours.
Yeah, awesome. Which is a sentiment shared so far, which is potentially one thing that's been interesting about this is it's potentially the controversial answer, because lots of Māori today consider Māori to be Māori blood only. It's a idea we see perpetuated a lot online, which is fine, and people can believe that. But when they start applying it to moko, this and this and this and this and this, one thing I find very interesting is that's not a sentiment so far that has been held by the artists, right? That for you guys, whāngai is still considered, whakapapa for those people, and in turn should be bestowed the same rights in the case by case, but I think a big part of it too is just that slight misunderstanding of whāngai and adoption, like Cody said, the nearest equivalent, but adoption seems to diminish a little bit what whāngai actually means to Māori. But yeah, so that's 3 times I've had that answer from Moko artists, which is not an answer you see a lot. And I posted the first clip the other day, and it was controversial, but it was interesting seeing the differing opinions between people who aren't Moko artists and a few Moko artists who jumped in the comments and said, no, that's, you know, that's ka pai, you know.
Yeah, you know, it might not be, you know, there might have been certain, you know, tikanga there might not necessarily be, you know, traditionally Māori. Might be, you know, a colonized mindset of Māori that will set in place for a lot of generations.
Yeah.
You know, and they've been taught for so long that some Māori just can't shake off just yet, or are still, you know, having trouble with the, you know, how everything's going. I've had some Māori still come up to me and say it's wrong that non-Māori are wearing moko.
Right.
Kiritihi or not. But they just need to be educated. Yeah. You know, informed in a way that they can understand and take it on.
Yeah. And because you're right, there's still a lot of, you know, I see a lot of it as well as that mamai or the hurt still from colonization, right? Just like you said. And so a lot of people, you know, I find one thing that's interesting, of course, is it must be difficult for Māori who don't feel comfortable enough to wear moko, you know, a taonga that is rightfully theirs, yet, yeah, the bro from Germany can come and just get kirituhi and, you know, call it a day and then go back to Germany, you know. And so I think there's that sort of imbalance where it seems for non-Māori it can be really easy for them to wear our art. And I imagine that's still a lot of the mamai that Māori out there feel towards this kind of thing, which is where they harbor these feelings, you know.
Yeah, a lot of times that those comments are coming from those who don't feel like they deserve to wear moko themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's still a tricky line, but
yeah. So you're obviously an artist and a very skilled artist, both obviously in just normal art, or I guess, you know, not on the body as we can see behind you, and obviously as a practitioner of moko. Do you also do non-moko tattoos?
Not so much anymore. You know, I'm not the greatest tattooist, but with moko, I'm comfortable. You know, I can rely on what I do. I used to like to dabble with, you know, custom lettering. Right. But I don't get enough, you know, requests on that. There are artists who specialize in that here in Wellington. Yeah. And 9 times out of 10, if it's someone, you know, who wants something extravagant, something that I know I might have a hard time doing, I'd rather them get the best possible job, so I send them down there. Right. Yeah. If there's a family member who's willing to let me, you know, get creative and do something within my range, then I'll have a go every now and again. But 9 times out of 10, I'm doing moko. Yeah, and I think the reason that question comes about so often is because I think people don't expect moko artists to be able to make a living based purely off of moko. Maybe, you know, I'm not sure if people just think it's too rare that they're like, oh, they must do other tattoos as well, right? And I go, well, some do or some did, you know, like I find lots of them did at the beginning, and now that moko is in the place that moko seems to be right now, moko seems to be enough for a lot of you guys. So yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I was taking walk-in tattoos, just to get comfortable with the tools, machines. I did fine with tattoos, different kind of clientele, different kind of expectation, and, you know, with people getting tattoos, you know, if there was one slight difference to the stencil or the design that they were referencing, there's a lot more chance of backlash. You know, it might not be a mistake, but if it's like a millimeter off, they won't be happy. Right. I think with moko, there's a lot of trust, a lot of you know, a lot of open-mindedness with it, and, you know, you can be a lot more creative with it. It doesn't have to be exact following a stencil. Yeah. You know? And yeah, I'm still surprised that moko is busy. Yeah, it's good. Even you bringing it up, I'm like questioning, like, I'm getting a few a week. Right. I'm just making think I'm just fortunate.
Yeah. It's cool, eh? It's great for both the artists and Māoridom. Like, it's obviously a great sign for Māori, you know, that keeps ramping up, and Māori keep being more comfortable to wear this and to have this art form and represent their Māoridom. So obviously, I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons that I follow your mahi and love your mahi personally is your use of color. You know, I think you have such a really strong use of color in your work. Obviously, you did the Bro Regan, good friend of mine, and he's got that beautiful purple in his one. Yeah. And to my knowledge, color, at least color use like that, it's relatively new. You know, that's an evolution of the Moko art form and the Moko practice. So how, in your experience, does or has Moko evolved with this modern revitalization of Moko? And are you, you know, how much do you push for that evolution, or try and push the boundaries of this art form in your work?
I try not to push people too much to get color. I always leave that as an option. Every day I'm asking, you know, are you wanting just line work, color, or shading, or all of the above? Last year was like a fluctuation of color. I was doing color most of the year. But this year, been a little quiet on color, to be honest. But every chance I get to do it, it's mostly the same variation of colors. It's mostly blues, which is very popular, and I like using blues or greens. Those have been the top two this year. But I do try and encourage people to get it done, but just not in a pushy way. Yep. I do have some color schemes I want to try out, but it all depends on the complexion of the recipient as well. Right. Yeah, I've learned from experience, the darker the complexion, the more difficult it is to put lighter tones in. Right. Might be a little limited to there. If the lighter the skin tone, you have a bit more wider variety to put in.
And I remember that's one thing that really stood out to me with the Bro Regans one was purple. And I went, whoa, that's strong. You know, I was like, that's pretty cool. Because you're right. You see and one of the other color schemes I see often is, well, either the power, you know, power color scheme, or the Rasta, you know, the Rasta colors, the red, yellow, green. But when the Bro came and showed me, he's like, oh, look at the Bro, it's purple. I went, whoa, that's cool. You know, that's like a unique color, and it was so vibrant, and it felt really like new. You know, it had a very sort of fresh feel to it, while still, of course, being undeniably Moko, you know, and I think that's the beauty of it. How about then, because we're starting to see a little bit, predominantly more on Kauai, I've never seen it in Mataora, but color on the kanohi, which can be a controversial topic.
Yeah, controversial, all right, for, you know, not only Te Ao Māori, but Moko artists as well. I've only ever done it once, and that was solely because of a whakapapa. You know, the wahine was quite you know, indecisive at first. She told me her whakapapa. She whakapapa from Taranaki, and she said she wanted blue in there. And I was like, I'm certain of whether I want to do colour. Do you want it lined or saturated, coloured in? Like, she wanted, saturated blue with purple lining. I told her straight no. There's only certain things you can do. I said, well, I know a little bit of the whakapapa that in the day, some pigmentation from Taranaki might have turned to a blue tint back in the day.
Right.
Yes, so due to that knowledge, we can apply the blue to this Kauai. Come the day, she changed her mind to purple. I told her, no, we're sticking to, you know, this kaupapa. Otherwise, we won't do colour at all. Respectfully. There's a kōrero behind it where, you know, if we just do any too vibrant colour, controversial. It might not be controversial, but it's big risk. And they may be happy to, you know, take the questions or take the backlash, but it also falls back on myself. So I had to inform her about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it seems to be something I've picked up is, like you said, in this context, there was a kōrero behind it. There was a reason you could apply the blue. That seems to be the sort of key to this question regarding color on the kanuhi is purpose. You know, there's got to be a reason. You can't just do it because you want nice yellow or blue or green, you know, like if there's a purpose and there's a strong purpose behind it and you can sort of prove that purpose either as the recipient or yourself, the artist, like you said, oh, I know this kōrero from the area, you know, and so we could apply it this way. Then those boundaries that often are deemed a little bit controversial, you know, can be set and can be set with good reason, you know, because that means there's good, you have something to back up that decision in a circumstance where it may be received interestingly, you know, because you don't know. Some people are like, oh, yeah, it's great. Or what the heck are you doing? You know, and I imagine it's still, again, because it's so fresh in the revitalization period still, you know, we are still in a revitalization of moko, you know, until basically until we no longer have to make series like this, you know, when these questions no longer have to be asked. Then I think there's a period there where then moko can start to be really pushed and evolve again, you know. Cody yesterday said he had a wānanga with rangi kipa. And in that wānanga, he said, if we never lost moko, I bet it would look crazy today, you know. He said, but it's because we lost it that we hold on to what it used to be so strongly now. And maybe if one day we get to the period where that is no longer the case, that evolution can start to go crazy again, you know. So if we're very lucky, we might be around for that day, but if not, I hope it comes, you know, to our mokopuna in the future.
I think we're slowly creeping up to it. Yeah, there are some artists that are evolving the craft so quickly, it's unreal. Yeah. And I think it's up to us to get on board and try and not evolve it too much, but, you know, be innovative.
Yeah.
Try and push for new directions.
Yes.
And yeah, take the craft of moko to the future.
Yeah, absolutely. As all art forms try to do anyway, you know. And that's kind of what I was talking with my whānau just off the yesterday's call, but in that same headspace, and it's kind of going tricky to do it when there's still so many questions, you know. Otherwise you're starting to give people so much, you know, there's too much to absorb. Oh wait, but you can get color, and there's, you know, there's so much happening. You want people to just understand moko in its purest form, you know, and you want that to be the general understanding of moko as it is before you can really start going crazy, you know. So one thing I like to talk about online, and I get asked about a lot, of course, is the representation of moko in media, whether it be films, video games, you know, just pop culture. Obviously, it's something we're very familiar with seeing either represented well or misrepresented well, and the word that seems to follow this content is cultural appropriation. So for you as a moko artist, where is the line between appreciation and appropriation in regards to moko in pop culture?
I think it mostly applies to, you know, how it is used, who it's used by. You know, if non-Māori is applying, you know, if they call it moko, it's questionable to who used it and what media it's done in. Also who it might be on or what it might be done on. And, you know, if there's no acknowledgement to it either, that's a big no. You know, if sometimes it might be evident that, you know, there might be elements to traditional moko. You know, it's easy for us to point out, some not really.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tricky one. Yeah. I think in terms of media, yeah, if it's not done by Māori, I think it would be considered cultural appropriation. If it has anything to do with, you know, Māori producers or, you know, Māori artists, then that's a different story.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which I agree as well, you know, and I think the thing that is where the gray area comes in is that inspiration, That's the deadly word when it comes to this is, oh, it's Moko inspired. You know, where do you draw the line between, oh, it's supposed to be inspired by, but they've clearly just Googled Moko and tried to, you know, half-assedly replicate what they see. And you see it a lot. In my experience, I see it the most in video games, and video game skins, or, you know, things like that, and or customization options, and it shows up in the customizing bar, poly tattoo 1, you know, poly tattoo 2, and people go, oh, well, it's just inspired by. I said, no, the minute they use that name, they removed all credibility, right? Like, you remove all ability to fight up against that, because poly tattoo 1, it's an outrageously vague misunderstanding of Maori, you know. There are many poly tattoos.
Another one is tribal.
The tribal one, tribal number 1, tribal number 2, anything like that, if it then vaguely represents anything like Moko, Tato, Kako, whatever it might be, that's absolutely in the appropriation department, you know. But I talked with Te Haunui because this is one for me personally. Lots of people disagreed with this, but one for me that I found really walked the line between inspiration for me was the recent Avatar film. James Cameron's Avatar, where he had that new tribe of aliens that had facial markings and things of the like, which he was open about being inspired by Moko. He was quite obvious about his inspirations for those designs. However, when I saw the final designs, I thought they'd been changed enough, you know. For me, I looked at them and I could go, oh yeah, I mean, it resembles the idea, but if I put it up next to my own face, for example, it doesn't look the same. You know, it doesn't look the same at all. But lots of people were unhappy about the fact that he even drew inspiration from Moko in the first place. And so I think that's where that interesting line can be. Well, in my opinion, he changed it enough, but some people just don't like the idea that he even used it in the first place, you know. So
I think the only thing would be, because he's non-Māori.
Yeah.
I mean, he gave acknowledgement of the inspiration, yes. It would have been, a lot more easier to approve if a Māori had, you know, contributed to the designs, even if they had been modified.
I think they might have.
Yeah.
I think he might have had consultation there.
Production involved, then there would have been a different story. But I think because of, you know, there might have been some backlash. I haven't seen the movie myself, so I do need to check it out.
And I think one thing that's interesting there too is the idea, some people have the idea that if you are to use imagery like Māori imagery, that the whole production needs to be Māori based, you know. And I think that's where another thing was. So I think people were going, oh, well, he did have Māori consultation, you know, he did consult with Māori and how to go about it, but James Cameron is not Māori, right? Like, the director-producer is still not Māori himself. So even though he consulted Māori, I think Māori was still upset, you know? So, like, sometimes people just want, if it's Māori, it needs to be done Māori, you know, which I understand too. It'd be cool to see that. But at the same time, I find if you want the representation and things like that, sometimes it's not quite as realistic, you know, that to try and find especially on that scale. I mean, James Cameron, he makes the biggest box office movies of all time, you know, and so it can be a very interesting thing to balance. And so I just like seeing the differing opinions regarding that.
I feel also applies to a different time. It's a different time of the world nowadays. It's a lot easier to ask those questions or put it out there now. Like, back when the movies like Blade, The Matrix were coming out, it might not have been noticed, but there was some mataora in those ones.
Yeah, there are.
And maybe during that time, during the revitalization, it was you know, it might have been a great thing to see a mataora on the big screen.
Yeah.
Regardless of them, if they were Māori or if they were not Māori. But I think now, you know, we're trying to make sure that our craft is, you know, being looked after and not being taken advantage of.
And one thing that I, in my experience, at least just based off of my comment section, so of course there's only a small section of the possibilities here, but one sentiment that I seem, or pattern rather, that I seem to see, I think, is that when it comes to the topic of representation in media and pop culture. It's more often than not people who don't have moko that like seeing it in their games, in their movies, you know, and because then those who have moko, I maybe have no need to feel that representation because they are living that representation themselves. And I think that's just an interesting pattern, you know, that obviously it's that representation is important for Māori who aren't necessarily or may not necessarily be confident in their Māoritanga to have moko themselves yet. And so for them to see it on the big screen, it's big for them, you know, it's cool. It's like, oh, wow, you know, Māori's in the big Avatar movie, you know, or whatever. And yet Māori who have moko are like, I don't know why, I don't understand why it needs to be, you know, and there can be that sort of confusion and contrast. And I think that's something for those of you out there who are mo moko to be mindful of, you know. I feel very grateful in myself that at 23 years old, you know, I've been raised in an environment where I feel comfortable enough to get moko kanohi. You know, I feel very grateful about that. But what I'm very aware of is that is not the case for so many Māori. And I think Māori who are mo moko can sometimes find themselves in this kind of area where, I don't want to say better than, but I do see that kind of mentality sometimes in my space where they kind of go, well, I got it done, you know, you guys should all just go get it done. And it's like, not everybody has that luxury, you know, not everybody is fortunate enough to either have the upbringing, have the confidence. And so it's important that these things are represented on screen as long as they're being done correctly. But it's important for people, you know, you see how important representation is for people in pop culture media. So, yeah.
Yeah, that comes to environment and confidence as well. So the environment sometimes might not be the most inviting or welcoming environment for moko kanohi. Might be, you know, a lot of people that just aren't ready to accept that into their environment just yet, or ready to take on those obstacles until we slowly build the numbers up. Yeah, and normalize it back again. Yeah, it's going to take some time.
Yeah. Well, awesome, bro. Well, that's all my partai for the day. So thank you very, very much for taking the time to sit down and be my number 3 guest, my 3rd guest on this new series, and 3rd and final for the year. I'm just starting off with you guys and seeing how it rolls out, and maybe in the new year we'll start bringing on some more guests if people receive this well. But yeah, I really appreciate your time. Of course, I really appreciate your mahi as well, and everything that you do for Māori in the space of moko. To roll us through to the end, my last question, do you have any advice for Māori who are thinking about getting moko?
Pretty much the basics. Yeah. For Māori, key to know your whakapapa. If you don't know it already, go out and find it, learn it, memorize it, and research. Find the artists that you like. Yeah, do your research and be respectful when approaching that artist. Yeah, it's quite simple.
Yeah. Do your research and be nice. You know? It's pretty straightforward stuff. Now, last thing, just to let people know where they can reach out to you, either just to follow you online, or if you prefer to be inquired for actual bookings, what's your email? You know, and I'll put it up on the screen for people.
Social media is all Stephen Thorpe Arts, Instagram and Facebook, and email address is stephenthorpearts@gmail.com. If you guys want to make a booking, email, we'll get back to you as soon as possible.
Awesome. Thank you very much, bro. That was great.
Thank you for having me. It's been a privilege.